What's up, guys? Welcome to this very special episode of the Sat Signal. Today, I have a millennial from Melbourne, Australia, joining us on the pod. He is a super interesting guy. He has set the record for the most number of live streams on TikTok. He's a super bright influencer, but he is also a Bitcoin maxi and a gold enthusiast for a millennial, which is super, super interesting. And so I dived into this discussion with Malcolm and said, as an Australian millennial, as somebody who sees Australian real estate prices where they are and sees all the challenges facing young Australians today, what is it that you saw in Bitcoin? How do you explain Bitcoin to other people? Do you explain it differently to a boomer than you do to a young person? What do you think of Michael Saylor and what he's doing with Bitcoin treasuries? And where can all of this go horribly wrong? In this interview, we cover that and so much more. Remember, guys, if you enjoy the show, comment, engage, get into it, and subscribe and tell your friends. That's what you can do to help us grow this channel, get more awesome young Aussies like Malcolm on the show. With that said, I hope you enjoy it. We'll see you on the flip side. What's up, guys? Welcome to this very special episode of Unemployable and, of course, the Sat Signal. I am joined by a young Australian, Malcolm Dennis here, who is a millennial, which is unusual for us because usually our audience is older people like me, and I'm super excited to have somebody a bit younger who hopefully you'll see the world through a different set of eyes today. Malcolm, thanks for coming, mate. Welcome to the show. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing really good. I've been blessed just on TikTok, going live every single night. And thanks for having me on this podcast. I watch it. I'm really excited to give my insight into it because I think I have some opinions and I want you guys to talk to me about these opinions. If I'm wrong, please let me know, drop a comment. I'll be answering all of them. I'm really interested in getting into an intellectual debate. I really want to know about what the thing is. What are these crypto assets? What's going on here? I'm trying to figure it out, and I have some strong opinions about what they are. But yeah, so let's
get that up front because I think people are going to want to follow you and learn more about you and how you came to be here. So maybe just drop us your socials. Where can they follow and learn more about Malcolm and what you're doing on the social world? Because you are quite well known on TikTok. You hold the record for the largest number of live streams, is it, in Australia?
Yeah, live viewers in 2023 to 2024, by far the highest live viewers, like on TikTok Live. So I pretty much cracked that algorithm in 2023, 2024. Now I've optimized my live for different things, but yeah, I got this shirt from TikTok. I'm a TikTok Live pro. And you know, when people ask me where they can find me, do you know what I say? I say, Google it.
And that does not go.
Yeah, but that does not go down well in a social setting. Trust me, it does not. They go, why don't you Google it? You know, you want me to do it. You just tell me. And I just say nothing. That's the beauty of this. So, you know, and this is, by the way, we'll get into this. This is made of solid 9-karat gold, right? Very an investment piece, some would say.
The listeners on Spotify, the listeners on Spotify, Malcolm's got a gold bar kind of thing around his neck with his handle on it, which is M&D Fashion Co, like medical doctor Fashion Co, MD Fashion Co.
Yes. And I also have this bug, this iced out bug with natural diamonds. And yeah.
So tell us, look, let's frame you up first. Like who are you? Like give us a background on you. And we're going to, for those of you listening, we're going to dive into Malcolm's a Bitcoin maxi, which means that he's all in on Bitcoin, but he also has a deep interest in gold as well. And so much more. So just give us the lowdown on who you are, how you came to be where you are in life, and then we'll dive into your thoughts around Bitcoin.
Yeah, and I just want to say before I get into this is how I am related to Bitcoin. Because you think I'm a TikToker, but I've been on the front wave of social media when media transferred from, you know, newspapers to online blogs to Facebook to Instagram to now TikTok. I've always been on these front waves and I've been able to remain relevant over the last 8 years doing MD Fashion Co. So I first started MD Fashion Co 8 years ago, went viral on Facebook, then went viral on Instagram when Instagram became the gold standard, to use a pun. And then now TikTok is, and yeah, managed to just ride that wave. So I've always been cognizant of where things are going, skating to where the puck is going. And I truly believe that Bitcoin is skating to where the puck is going when it comes to this whole fiat currency system and how Bitcoin kind of fixes that, or at least competes with that. And I'm really, really interested in that. So Couple things about me. So I've done MD Fashion Co. for 8 years. I'm a musical artist. So if you Google MD Fashion Co., I'm known mainly for my music and the music videos on YouTube. I've in my whole life I've worked multiple jobs. I've had a cash for gold business for a few years where I would buy gold, so cash for gold, and that was really when I got into becoming a gold bug and really, I guess, learning about sound money and all that. A lot of people like Peter Schiff, I'd be really interested in, and then Bitcoin came. I got into Bitcoin at about 2017, about 7,000 US dollars, and really, really interested by this technology. Insanely interested. I just love that you don't have to tell anyone to before you send money, right? I think that sounds super sovereign to me. And John Locke, the idea that people should have control over their property and the things like that. That really really resonated with me. And now Bitcoin's it's become what it is today. So back then, when I first got into Bitcoin, 2017, it was more people trying to sell it as a currency, which was more believable back then because I guess the transaction fees were lower. But now it seems to have evolved. I have written here in my notes. Do you want to know anything more about me, by the way? Or do you understand?
No, I mean, I think just for the listeners, I mean, you can go on Google MD Fashion Co and see what you're about. I'd be interested to know what problem did you see that Bitcoin solved, or was it just intellectual curiosity of what's this Bitcoin stuff back then, or did you sense or feel a real problem, or were you looking for a solution, or were you just a curious mind that went down the rabbit hole of sound money? What was your journey into it?
Okay, well, I can tell you, I can talk around numbers, but you get to a point. See, I've worked 2 jobs my whole life and been saving, like I'm very frugal, and as a result, when you get to a certain number in the bank account, you start to think, well, what is this? Right? What is this? And then you learn about inflation, you realize, wait, it's going down 2% a year. Okay, so then how do I so I got into gold as a result of that, right? From the fact just knowing that it cannot be inflated, or at least it does inflate 2% a year. I learned that later. But I always had these, I guess, leaning towards sound money. I just thought it was a good idea. And then that's what got me into gold. And then when you're into gold, you can pretty much understand Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is essentially gold, but it has benefits and it has downsides also. So that's what got into it. So when you're asking what got me into Bitcoin, well, what got me into gold? It's the same thing, right? If you just believe that your work should not be debased.
Yeah, so you've done all this work in this social media world and influencing and building up some capital for the first time probably in your life, because you look quite young. So you've started to accrue these tokens, which we call fiat currency or digits in a bank account. And then somehow you learn that if I just sit on this stuff, it's going to get worth more every year that I just sit on it. And it didn't feel right, because it's like your life force that you expanded or expelled to get this fiat currency is being debased and being devalued through no fault of your own. Is that kind of like, not trying to put words in your mouth, but that felt morally wrong to you?
Yeah, it absolutely felt morally wrong. And John Locke says that, right? It seemed morally wrong. And yeah, I also, and then when you go into Bitcoin, there's so many clever people that talk about, like Jeff Booth, for example, talks about, like, or what's his name? Eric Voorhees. He talks about, if we have a sound money, then the economy is actually going to be better. So a lot of the problems in the economy are actually caused by fiat currency. So that's what really got me to think, like, as Michael Saylor said, this is now this is a revolution at this point, right? A revolution, like, to assume that, a lot of the problems are being caused by fiat currency, like wars, for example. To use a very simple example, I'm sure you know this. Back in the day when the kings had to go to war, they had to increase the taxes on the peasants, right? They couldn't just print money. So the peasants say, no, we don't want to go to war. And then the king couldn't do that. But now, if you want to go to war, you just print the money and then off we go. And there's certain humanitarian things that come with Bitcoin. There's a lot of implications that come with Bitcoin. But the question that I think is really interesting to ask any Bitcoin maxi or anybody who's in Bitcoin, even if they're just speculating, is, what is BTC? I think that's a really interesting question. And you can kind of gauge what someone thinks about Bitcoin. Like, I have a lot of friends, well, if you want to talk about younger people, a lot of the people who are into Bitcoin that I know, their net worths aren't very high. They're in it for the pump. I'm
Right.
going to be honest. I talk to them about Metcalfe's law or, sovereignty, digital sovereignty and all that. And I guess they never really had enough money to really care, because something that happened to me, I was getting out 15,000 Australian from the bank and they were asking me questions about it. And that doesn't sit right with me. Like,
Yeah.
I broke my back to get this money, and this, sorry to say, slightly overweight man is telling me, now, what do you need this for? And I'm like,
Yes.
just give me my money. I wanted it to shoot a video for social media, but it's like, why do I have to explain this to you? And I guess the younger people, here's my analysis of young people in Australia. They don't have very high net worths, in my opinion. Right? So yeah, they're in Bitcoin for the pump, and they're in the meme coins and all that for the pump. They haven't really done the research, in my analysis. And so yeah, they have not really come up to these things of like, a lot of them don't have they're not in tax bracket where they have to pay tax. They're getting a tax refund. So yeah. So they haven't really scratched those, to be honest.
Malcolm, I don't think it's just young people that are in it for the pump. I think most Bitcoin owners, when they first come to the technology, come to it for the number go up. They come for the profit and stay for the revolution. What I found as they go further down the rabbit hole and as they move up, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where their needs change and they're not as, high time preference. But hearing you talk, what I find interesting about you is that you were curious about fixing a moral problem. And that gives me so much hope in talking to young people that can see it, that there is a profoundly moral flaw in convincing the population that it's okay to take 2% of everybody's net worth. If you believe the 2% number, which I don't think either of us do believe that inflation is only 2%. I think it was Milton Friedman said inflation is a tax that is not voted for. It's just mandatory and it happens every year and it's way more than 2%. One of the biggest ones that's never in the basket is taxes. And you live in Victoria and are currently in the highest state tax hikes in Australia. And Australia is now, as of this week, the second highest taxed country in the OECD and hard closing in on number one. But Malcolm, very interesting.
I just want to say something quickly. Yes, because the tax day, the financial year ends in 5 days, right? And I don't think Melbourne, just anecdotally, just very quickly, my electric scooter got stolen twice. It's stolen once, bought another one, got stolen twice in the Melbourne CBD in 6 days, back to back with, right? And my e-scooter's worth $150. So where's my tax going? I'm sorry, if it's getting unsafer, if people are stealing, then where's my tax going? I'm paying more, but what's going on here? Like, I just want to know because here's the thing. Yes, the tax is high. That's cool. But the inflation tax is high too. So where's it going?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, I think we both know a big part of it's going into debt in Victoria. The fiat money printer, they borrowed so much, their interest bills are out of control. Unions have dragged out infrastructure projects, which has murdered the state. And so the unions are running the country and the banks, but that's another discussion. Malcolm, yep. I'm super interested to hear, how do you respond when people ask you, what is Bitcoin? And do you have a different answer for a young person versus a boomer or an older person? Do you have to boomerize it? Or so just how do you answer that question? What is Bitcoin?
Great question. Well, to be honest, a lot, not to get too personal, but a lot of the boomers in my life are super close-minded. And just as Michael Saylor said, I think Tony Robbins said this, you only change when the pain is high enough, right? So if you're sitting on your property and nominally it's gone up 10x, nominally, because you don't even know what inflation is, then why am I'm going to say Bitcoin's better than property? Bitcoin, it's my property went up 10x. I'm right. And here's the numbers to show it. But I say, well, if you took the same amount of money in 1950, put in the S&P 500, you'd have far more. Oh, no, we don't want to talk about that. Just look at me. I made this. So to boomerize it, to be honest with Bitcoin, I treat it like spreading the gospel in Christianity. They're going to figure out at some point, right? Because it's sad to say, but Michael Saylor says this, right? Does he boomerize it, or does he just say the old guard's going to die? I mean, he tries to convince people, but
yeah, I mean, Yeah, I think boomers are waking up, but you are right. Especially
Mm,
Australian boomers are a unique type of boomer because Australia is so addicted to real estate, and you know it's historically been so good. But when you price
mm.
real estate, even Australian real estate and Bitcoin, Australian real estate is just devaluing like crazy relative to Bitcoin, and you know that's the fact because you just said it here in 2017. Bitcoin was $7,000. If you put that into how many Bitcoin it takes to buy a house in 2017, it was a lot. Today it's three.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. And
Yeah.
also in literal nominal terms, a lot of the new build apartments that are built in Melbourne, they are actually going down about 10% a year. So about 10%
Nominal
in the
terms,
first
right?
5 years in nominal terms. And this is real. If you go on realestate.com and you actually go on the building profiles, you'll see that they're selling at actually lower prices now than they were in 2020 and even sometimes 2017. And these are brand new build apartments. So that's obviously another scam. It's like we'll give you a stamp duty. We'll waive the stamp duty fee if you buy a new apartment. You spend 500K on the new apartment. As soon as it's built, it's worth 400K. So it's like
Mm.
So that's another thing. But to
Let's
go
get
back
to
to what we were saying,
the
yeah.
question of how do you answer the
Mm.
question from young people and then from older
Yeah.
people, and is
All
there
right.
a different answer?
I'll explain. Yes, there is absolutely a different answer. So with younger people, they totally understand a digital asset far, far, far more easily because as young people, we have Fortnite skins, we have Counter-Strike skins. I don't know if you know about this. It's a whole economy of in-game skins, right? These things aren't real, right? The,
Yes.
the, the function of them is to show off to your friends online, right? And some of these skins can go up to $1,000 and everything, right? So
Wow.
when you understand Bitcoin, there's already not that hurdle of, but it's not real. I can't touch it, so it's not real, right? A lot of people don't even get in the stock market for that reason, right? I guess they just don't trust it, right? And which is not right because if you're in the stock market, you're owning a percentage of a company, you own a percentage of the factories, a percentage of anyway. So, but yeah, so when I talk to younger people, I pretty much just say, well, what I would normally say, I'd say it's sovereignty, right? So do you want to go to the bank and get your money, or would you rather, if you sent the money to someone overseas, that they just get it, right? That you don't need to ask anyone, you don't need to tell anyone. I think young people, especially me, I like that. I really like that idea, and I've used it a few times in my life because, using PayPal sometimes you have a fee, you know, and in a global,
I'm with you. I
yeah.
love that. When I was in Bitcoin Prague and you asked me off camera what that was like, I was buying my coffee and I was buying a beer and I was everything that, the Bitcoin hats I bought, it was all transacted with Bitcoin. But I love that idea as well. The idea that I can send value to anybody in the world instantaneous without any intermediary and without anybody's permission required. Very, very powerful. It's just another example how, as enslaved citizens, what we have become used to. Like we've become used to going in and asking permission to get our own money back and then get used to them charging us to give it back, which is, it's a crazy reality that we've just normalized.
Yes, but to get philosophical, some would say that humans like to be ruled, to get philosophical, right? So
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of people I know, they will never buy Bitcoin. And the reason is because they're just too comfortable in the fiat system, right? They don't want the responsibility of having their own seed phrase. They don't want the responsibility of that. They a lot of people just want to live their life, they get their paycheck, they spend it and optimize it for quality of life. And then they just move on. And then Big Macs get more expensive and then they die. That's most people. And that's, hey, that's fine until you look in a history book and you see what happens when the Romans debased the currency. What happened?
Yeah,
the
exactly.
the society went crazy, and then the barbarians came in and they blamed it on the barbarians. So it wasn't our
Mm-hmm.
fault. It's just the barbarians came in. No, they couldn't pay the soldiers because the soldiers were getting paid in a debased currency, didn't want to protect them anymore, and history repeats itself. So yeah, I do find, although I was reading this book last night, The Psychology of Money, Morgan Housel. I don't know if you've read it, right? But
I
there's a
haven't actually.
chapter. Okay, really good. There's a chapter in it about how alluring pessimism is, and I don't want to be pessimistic about this, right? I wrote a thing in my notes, right? And we're jumping around the notes, but this is good. That Bitcoin is a great technology, and it is objectively better money than a lot of other things we've ever had, right? It's a brand new technology, just in the same way TikTok is a better social media than any other social media we've ever had, right? So the people who were on it early, like me, or I wasn't even on it early, but the people who learn how to use it can benefit from that. What was I saying? I've lost my train of thought.
You were talking about it being a better thought, and you're talking about the Romans and the collapse of Roman when they started printing more money and debasing the currency. And I think you were answering in a roundabout way, in a weave, how you explain Bitcoin and why it's better.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So Bitcoin is a better technology. Yes.
Yes.
And so, that's what I was going to say. So a positive spin on this could be that the people who run fiat currency, just because this comes up, they could actually tone back the inflation. They could actually fix the inflation just because Bitcoin exists. So I was watching the talk, just to go on a slight tangent, with Ross Albridge at BTC 2025, the one in Vegas. And he said when he was in prison, the only time that the prison guards ever gave them respect was when they came together and they all said the same thing or they hunger strike together, right? And that's the only time that they got respect. So in order to stand up to power, if the people in power know that we have Bitcoin as a result, right, then it holds them to account. Peter Schiff says this a lot, like going on the gold standard, it holds governments to account. And that's why they don't want to do it. But yeah.
And this is an interesting little segue, because that self-custody of economic power that you're referring to there, right? Like if all of a sudden everybody stored their wealth in Bitcoin, it gives you incredible power as an individual, because the government can't take your Bitcoin if you store it properly, right? In a seed phrase, it's in your head. And, if you don't like the way that the government treats your Bitcoin in terms of the way it taxes it or the way it tries to control you with it, you can just move. Whereas if your money's in the fiat system inside of banks, which are regulated and controlled by governments, you're trapped. You can't speak freely, like we saw with the Canadian truckers, or they'll cut off the money rails. And if you need money to eat still in your life, if you're still in that stage, you're through the money, they can weaponize your money, which is so powerful. Is that one of the draws for you? Is that you've used the term sovereignty? A lot of people don't know what sovereignty means. What does sovereignty mean to you?
Well, sovereignty, I mean, I guess it goes back to Christianity, right? So God creates every human equal, and every human has these unalienable rights. I guess I said that right. Unalienable rights. And the right to property is and freedom. What is freedom? Freedom, that's a subjective term, right? Is a slave is not free, right? Because they're forced to work and they have no option and they don't see any fruits of their labor. Okay, how is that different from someone working 9 to 5, paycheck to paycheck? I mean, there are some similarities there, right? If you have no other option, or working and getting your currency, the thing you get paid for, its currency, your currency is being debased. So yeah, I guess sovereignty just means having control, having freedom. I think that's really important. And I think humans having freedom is important. I feel that's important. I guess it goes back to a Judeo-Christian value. I'm not sure what else to say, right? Sovereignty, is that right?
That's one of my highest values is personal freedom. And I think a lot of people haven't really stopped and thought about how money affects. Like if you don't play by the rules and your money's in the bank and you don't pay your taxes, the government in America, they just take it out of your bank account, literally take it. In Australia, go ahead.
Yeah, so this is very real if you look at history, but also like I know Kanye West, he was a billionaire. He became like all his accounts frozen, everything just over what he said, or for some reason, I'm not sure what was going on, but that doesn't happen to most people and they don't realize. But I don't want to sound, again, the psychology of money thing. I don't want to sound pessimistic because there is a trade-off here. With fiat, with the fiat system, you do get benefits, right? You get a safe place to stay. You get, nice parks and if you lose your money, then you can get it back in the bank account, right? In Australia, it's like 200,000. If you lose it, you'll get it back. So I don't want to be alluring towards the pessimism. It is a trade-off. to take sovereignty over your money. It is a trade-off, and that's why I believe a lot of people just won't do it, because a lot of people they're comfortable, right?
So when you explain it to people, is this sort of a way of saying, is that one of the vectors that you say to people? It is a way to store your economic output in a inflation-resistant way, or it won't be debased, and it gives you sovereignty and freedom, or the ability to, not be exposed to all the vulnerabilities of being within the system.
Yeah, that's the way I explain it. Yeah, that's what I say. I say pretty much you can't. It's a way to have control over your own economic power. It's kind of hard to explain inflation to most people because they just to see it as a fact of life, right? Like death and taxes and inflation. They're just like, that's just what happens, right? The prices go up and there's nothing we can do about it. So, and a lot of people don't really understand that Bitcoin, but I will explain that if they understand, right? If Bitcoin has 21 million and fiat currency is unlimited, if you have $100 bill and then the government goes away, no one is going to take this $100 bill. But if you have a Bitcoin and the government goes away, people will still take that Bitcoin. People will still take this gold, right? For example.
That's interesting. I haven't heard that angle before, but I like that.
And that's a really tangible way of explaining it to people. But people just, they say, well, the government's not going away. So what are you talking about? Like, right? And most people don't read history, right? And in history, that just happens again and again and again. The people in power eventually overreach their power by printing more currency. And then, they can't pay the soldiers. Yeah, because power doesn't exist in a vacuum. You can't just be one person and powerful. Power is your influence over other people. I don't know if you read 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene, but that's what power is, a network. So you actually have to have influence over other people. And having influence over other people means you have an army that you can enforce this fiat system. And if you can't, if the army isn't going to listen to you, then anyway, that's typically what happens.
I think John D. Rockefeller said it very succinctly. He says, show me who controls the money, and I don't care who's in charge politically, kind of thing, like whoever controls the money press controls the world. And that's really how it stands. So what about older people? Have you got any clever ways of explaining it to older people who just think it's some weird internet money, because they're so in the system that they're like a fish in water. They're not aware that the water's there at all. Do you have any ways to explain it to them, or analogies that sort of help bridge the gap between that world? And then I'll ask you the same for gold, because I'll be interested in gold.
Okay, so I think actually a good way to do it, now that I think about it, is just to talk about land taxes in Australia, right? So land taxes have gone up a ridiculous percent. I don't know the exact stats, but they've definitely gone up a lot. So a lot of these guys who've accumulated land and use that negative gearing, to borrow more, and right. The issue is the land taxes going up. So you can't really hold these properties and even get a good return at all, right? If you look at actually the returns, it's like they're getting a 3% from property, if that. And I guess that would be a way you'd explain it, right? So you'd say, like, I understand you don't want to put your money in the bank. I get it, because it's going to lose value. But putting it in property, you now have the government risk, right? That they could take it away and all that. But you also have the tax risk, right? Which is also a government risk. They could just increase the taxes. So having Bitcoin, you have something is scarce, and you don't have to change the roof. You don't have to get tenants in order for it to get a yield. And you know what it is, right? So I guess that's some way you would explain it. But again, people only change. This is humans in general, including me, right? I'm not holier than thou. People only change when the pain is higher. Saylor says the same thing.
Yeah, he does. I think the pain is starting to happen now in Australia, even in the real estate market. I think investors now are starting to go, hang on a minute. In Victoria, for example, land tax is getting super aggressive to the point where the numbers are not working. Wage growth is not keeping up with real estate growth. And so if wages are not growing at the speed of real estate, that can't be sustainable long term. And they're starting to go, hang on, every year that goes by with Bitcoin, they're starting to go, oh, hang on, this little thing called Bitcoin is just CAGRing at 40, 50% a year, and my property is at 7%, and I don't have to change the roof. I don't have the tenants. I don't have blah, 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 blah. And it's starting to happen slowly. You're going to
Yeah,
say
right.
something there.
Yeah, so Saylor said this at BTC Prague. He said, well, he was talking about volatility. I was watching it last night. He said volatility is good for Bitcoin because when Bitcoin is moving like property, that's when Warren Buffett is saying to buy Bitcoin. That's where all the big banks are saying, offering for you to buy Bitcoin. So that's where I think most people will get in. The boomer types. I guess I'm a pessimist on this thing. I think that the pain's just going to get so bad with property that the monetary premium will slowly be drained down and then slowly move into Bitcoin. But by that time, Bitcoin is going to be moving like gold before the 50% increase that happened recently.
He said that when your bank is telling you to buy Bitcoin, it'll be $1 million a coin, and that's why the volatility is good. But it is interesting. I'm seeing it now, even with my friends. I'm 51, and I'm seeing friends of mine now that are starting to really rethink and go, hang on, maybe I don't want to double down. I want to allocate into this asset class, and I'm starting to see money from real estate now move. I liquidated all my real estate in Australia and allocated a fair chunk of it to Bitcoin or Bitcoin proxies because I can see where the puck is going. Let's talk about gold for a minute, and then I want to talk to you about MicroStrategy and Bitcoin proxies and Treasury companies and stuff like that, because I think that'd be interesting. But I'm interested because in the show notes you said that you're a gold bug still. Now, when we and I find that surprising because you understand Bitcoin so well. So I'm really curious because I genuinely respect the way you think about this. I'd love to learn why you're still a gold bug, because when I think about things like someone who's values sovereignty and says, look, if I don't like the rules, I can sort of leave. It's very difficult to leave with real gold, unless you're talking paper gold. It's very difficult to sort of move a substantial amount of gold. There's lots of limitations around gold, which are fairly obvious. But what is it about gold that you still love? Like, why do you believe that everyone should still have gold?
Yeah, so I think if you believe in Bitcoin, you have to believe in gold, in my opinion. And I believe also if you believe that diversification is the only free lunch we get in finance, that you should probably have Bitcoin and gold. And I'll explain why. So Bitcoin has benefits over gold, right? One of those benefits is you don't need to verify Bitcoin, right? When I send you Bitcoin, your wallet will know that it is Bitcoin. If I were to give this to you for a car or whatever, you would have to melt this down and verify that it is gold. Okay, that's a benefit for Bitcoin. But a benefit for gold is that I guess you don't need the internet connection for it to be useful, right? And also gold has a far longer time that it has been useful and valuable to humanity, right? But I think one important thing, and let me think about how I can word this. Okay. One of the risks of Bitcoin is that Bitcoin is a social network, right? So it due to Metcalfe's law, what gives it value is its network effect, right? So that is positive because it can grow very fast, but it's also negative because it actually works against itself. When people stopped using MySpace, people just stopped using MySpace, right? And I think Bitcoin as a social network has that risk to it. Because if we believe that Bitcoin, we have created a better money than God created, which God created gold as money, right? If we created a better money, we invented it with Bitcoin, we have to also believe that we can create a better one than Bitcoin. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If we invented a better money, the best money, we have to believe that. Do you agree with that? That we have to agree. We have to believe that we can make a better one than Bitcoin.
Possibly, yeah. And I think I listen to Jeff Booth quite a bit, and he talks about two existential threats for Bitcoin, and one of them being quantum, right? So a quantum resistant Bitcoin, and he said, look, quantum's still some time away in his opinion, but I would see that Bitcoin will pivot and cover that off. But I can't think of a much better. I mean, the rarity of the birth of the genuine birth of an asset like this it's a very rare event where we see something like this. Like Jeff says, well, Bitcoin's been, people say, oh, Bitcoin's slow. How come it hasn't turned into money yet? And Jeff says, well, the protocol wars, and Bitcoin is the protocol. If you look at the World Wide Web, it was a 16-year war before we got to HTTP : //. That was 16 years to get to there. Once that was settled and we decided it was the www, then all the layer ones and layer twos and the internet as we experience it today unfolded. And he said, where we are right now in Bitcoin's journey is we've just won the protocol wars, and now it's build time. And we'll start seeing over the next decade some phenomenal, advances. So to answer your question, yes, there could be a better Bitcoin, but I think Bitcoin I love gold for a lot of reasons as well. I've read the Bitcoin Standard, and in that book, Safe does an amazing job of explaining why gold was so superior to everything up until that time. Yeah. But I think Bitcoin on every measure, if you haven't watched Adam Livingston on YouTube, watch Adam Livingston, and he has a video called Why Peter Schiff is Wrong. And it's an amazing video on gold versus Bitcoin. And I just think Bitcoin is superior in every way to gold. But
okay. Let's have this debate, because I find this really, really interesting. Okay, the Bitcoin Standard, they said they used seashells as money. The reason they used seashells as money is because rats couldn't eat it. You could use grain as money, but rats would eat it. So rats didn't eat seashells. That is a far better money than grain, right?
Wow.
So then gold is a lot better than seashells because it doesn't rust, and and you can divide it more, right? Okay, fiat currency is better than gold in a global society. Would you give me that? In
some definitions of
what velocity money. The money
has yes. I mean, there's definitely better features to fiat, but some features are obviously massively flawed as well.
Correct. So you do agree that there's a trade-off, right? There's a trade-off here.
Sure.
Right. And that's what I'm saying with Bitcoin and gold. Okay. So the flaw of Bitcoin that gold does not have is that Bitcoin is a social network. And social networks, as we've seen, it goes back to TikTok.
Well, let's talk about
it's
that.
So great. It goes back to TikTok.
I don't know that it's a social network. I think better what you said, network effects. It relies on people believing in it, right?
Yeah.
But so does gold. Gold it could be just a heavy doorstop in the future. A bit like aluminium back in the day used to be what kings and queens would have their knives and forks made of aluminium because it was so difficult to refine and make. Whereas then they improve the technology and it's worthless. So gold, I think, has a massive premium above its use case. Like if it was just valued based on what it is used in transistors and electronics, it's not worth what it's worth now.
Okay.
It's attracted this massive money premium because people believe in it. So there's that belief. So I think gold at its current price relies on the same network effect or shared belief as Bitcoin.
Okay.
And fiat is the king of shared belief.
Okay. I think it is I think with gold, there's a big thing that you're missing here, right? So with Bitcoin, it can go to zero. Gold will never go to zero. And it's not just because gold is used in electronics, gold is used in dentistry. Gold is used in those things, but it would be used far more for far more things like cooking utensils if it was far cheaper. Gold has a monetary premium. Yes. What doesn't in this fiat currency world? Nobody wants to hold fiat. Everything has a monetary premium. So of course, gold has a monetary premium. Now, and I want to address what Peter Schiff says. Peter Schiff says, what does he say? Bitcoin will never replace gold. He is right. Bitcoin will never be used in transistors. Bitcoin will never be used in dentistry. But what he needs to refine that statement. Bitcoin can replace the monetary premium gold has.
Yes.
Okay. It definitely can, because it does those monetary things better than gold. And this is a nuance that I feel like why don't these people understand this, right?
Yeah.
When you're comparing gold and Bitcoin, it's like, it's not all or nothing, right? And that's why I say you need both. Okay. Because
I think the only thing gold can do is actually the physical functions in the real world, like run a circuit board or whatever they use it for. But in terms of storing it, in terms of like you need armed guards, you need, like when Russia paid, I think it was Iran recently with like 200 kilos of gold or something. You had to put it on a plane and you needed security guards. And it would have cost them an absolute fortune to get those gold bars over state lines, whereas they could have done it with Bitcoin instantly. So I think that really, in a monetary sense, I don't think there's any advantage to gold. I think there's just that small use case of where gold's used in electronics. But other than that, I don't see any way that gold is better from a financial point of view.
From a monetary to hold.
From a monetary point of view.
The question is, if I had to fight off 10 men, would I prefer a Bitcoin or a block of gold? I would pick the block of gold, right? We're talking about use case. Now, if your use case is, and I wrote this in the notes, if your use case is to store wealth over 100 years, okay, or even 1,000 years, firstly, we have to get around the fact that why would you even want to store wealth for 1,000 years? Because you're not going to be around. And let's be real, after I die, what do you think the people who are around me are going to do with this?
Yeah.
They're not going to go, oh, it's a long, it holds value. No, they're going to, all right, woo, let's go. Yeah. Right. So, okay. So let's just assume that you can transfer the knowledge from one person to another. Okay. Then, yeah. So what would you, if you wanted to store your wealth for 1,000 years, would you pick Bitcoin or gold? I assume you'd pick, yeah.
Bitcoin for me.
No, I'd have to go 50-50.
Yeah.
Because Bitcoin has a social network risk. Right. And gold, I know in 1,000 years, that gold brick can still be used to fend off 10 men if they were running at you. Right. And I know that's a ridiculous argument, but gold is an element that does not rust. Right. It's easily malleable, easy to play around. So, you could definitely use it for cooking utensils. You could use it for, I don't know, pots and pans. And it also conducts heat in a different way. So yeah, it has I have a higher chance. Right? Not a higher chance, but there is a chance that gold will be valuable in 1,000 years. And there's also a chance that Bitcoin will be valuable in 1,000 years. And both of them have risks, right? The only way to not get risk is to put your money in the bank and know that it's going to go to zero. So as I said, diversification is the only free lunch. So anyway, what do you think about that?
For the record, Bitcoin will never go to zero because I have a call option on the entire supply at 10 cents. So...
Okay.
I'm just kidding. So moving on,
wait, I just want to say one quick thing. Will a Picasso ever go to zero?
Probably no.
Picasso will never go to zero in 10,000 years?
Probably not. I think art is also an interesting but clumsy, awkward, archaic way of storing wealth, in the same way that I think gold is. Yeah. So
the
I think
risks
it'll always
have are cultural risks. The risks of art are cultural.
But I mean,
right?
but they've been around a long time. When you're talking about a Monet or you're talking about a genuine master, the brand value of those assets is significant, and there are certain brands that like that. I mean, he can't fuck up his brand at this point. He's been dead for hundreds of thousands of years or whatever. Like these guys have been gone for a while. So he can't literally screw the brand up. There will always be people, I think, that will want to say, I own this thing. And it's a scarcity, right? Like I think art is a scam for the most part, but it's a scarcity. You can't make another one. You can't paint another one, right? It's got the similar qualities in some ways. And Saylor even says he looked at art, but to put his $500 million into, but when he analyzed everything, gold, art, he said Bitcoin wins hands down on every front, and the rest is history. But it's not to criticize. Like, as I said, I don't like fighting with gold bugs because I think gold bugs and Bitcoin people are the same people. I think they both love hard money. They both understand that fiat is a scam. They both believe in, I say to people, imagine a world, like really as a thought experiment, imagine a world in which a school teacher can go to work for an honest day's pay, and at the end of that day, whatever they didn't spend and they stored, in 10 years, they could get the same value. Now, just think about the amount of pressure that comes out of modern life if that was true, that your savings actually did grow instead of get eaten away, because this inflationary lie has pushed ordinary people further and further up the risk scale. They have to now start to take more and more risk. We're having to work longer hours and we're getting less in our shopping trolleys, and the quality of our life is declining. In fact, human production, reproduction, young people like you are now choosing not to have families purely because they can't afford to have families. And that is all stemming from broken money. And that's why I'm so passionate about this stuff, and why I love talking to young people, because I'd love to see Australia's facing all kinds of problems. We need to have kids, but who can afford them, right? It's
Just
problematic.
turn on the immigration taps.
Yes, and that
And this
leads
is what
to
I
the
said.
next big Ponzi scheme.
Yeah,
Let's talk
yeah.
about the next big Ponzi scheme in Australia as a result of immigration. I mean,
Okay.
what are your thoughts as a
All right.
young
All right.
person looking at the real estate market? Most young people can't buy into it, but what's your thoughts as a young Australian?
Okay, so obviously it's hyper inflated, but I think one of the main issues with property in Australia is a conflict of interest, right? And
Mm.
call me crazy, right? Call me crazy, but I was talking to AI about this. I said, if the people in power hold all the property and they have the power to make the rules on immigration and they have the power to make the rules on property, won't they just make the property? Won't they artificially prop the property market up? Like, obviously, it's a conflict of interest, right? So the people who run and make the regulations, right? They own property. So I think that's why immigration is super high, because it props up property. And I also think another thing that contributes to the housing crisis in Melbourne and Sydney and all that is regulation. So if I went to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and I drove out 30 minutes out from the CBD of Kuala Lumpur, and there's still high rises of apartments all the way out there. The reason is because they have a lot of cheap labor from Bangladesh. I heard that's just from someone who lived there, right? They have people coming in building these apartments like crazy. They're building apartments like crazy. And admittedly, Malaysia is a far less wealthy country than Australia. But then how do they not have a housing crisis? How are there so many more in numbers apartments? Whereas in Melbourne, the high-rise apartments, they're just not there, right? I think it's regulation. This is what I believe. I would be interested to hear what you say. But yeah, I think the people in power in Australia, they own the property. They're boomers, as you say. They got rich off property, so they're just trying to prop it up. Same with regulation. No, you can't build these multi-level apartment blocks because we just say so. And yeah, this is what I believe. Now, if I'm wrong, can somebody please correct me? Where am I wrong in this? Because this is just what it seems to me. Like, and what am I missing here?
Yeah. Well, Charlie Munger said it, right? He said, show me the incentives and I'll show you the outcome. But I think I think that's definitely true. I think, we have politicians that own real estate themselves, but they also have budgets that they're trying to balance and manage. And Australia, especially now, with all these new policies that have come in and things that need to be funded, NDIS, all these other things, they all cost money, right? And one of the biggest sources of tax revenue is property. So if you all of a sudden start doing things to stop or slow down the property industry in Australia, the repercussions are huge. And I'm out. Like, I don't have a dog in this fight now, but it's a really difficult, intractable problem because it goes further than just a few bad. I think there's this sort of misguided belief that is a few politicians that are evil, that are just lining their own pockets. I believe there's a tiny bit of that, or a bit of that conspiracy that's true, but I think the broader conspiracy is, if you actually saw the amount of cash that is being wasted by our government, and mismanaged, and the absolute rorting from the unions that are costing the Australian taxpayers a mountain of money. That cash has to come from somebody, and unfortunately, it comes from the little guys, and it comes from real estate, like the money and stamp duty, land tax. And this is the problem with owning real estate. Why I sold everything is because you can't relocate the asset. You own the asset. They, like on the Gold Coast, they just introduced a view tax. So if you have an apartment over level 4, you get a tax in your rates for the view. Now, what's ridiculous about this is that my apartment was level 3. I had a $7 million apartment at level 3, direct ocean, right? Across the road, the poor bastard who's a block inland and looking west over the hills on level 5 gets view taxed, and I didn't. Right? His apartment was probably 1/10 the price of mine, but he got hit with the tax. Like, it's just lunacy. And governments just go, that's in our jurisdiction, we'll find a way to tax it. It's absurd. And you see
Okay.
pensioners, moving out of properties that they can't afford the land tax on anymore, that they've lived there their whole lives. So yeah, anyway, I mean, I think it's a big problem. And if you were in power yourself, or if I was in power, we go, holy shit, look how hungry this beast is. And real estate is such a massive contributor. How do they turn it off? I don't think they can. I think they've just got to keep pumping people in and keep the Ponzi going until it doesn't go anymore.
Thank you for wording that. You worded that very well. And yeah, my knowledge about this topic is not as sophisticated as other people, right? And yeah, makes total sense. Thank you for explaining that. And yeah, it does make sense. Yeah, they're kind of using it as a way to just squeeze more out of the middle class, I guess, right? By these people that own the homes. We know they have money, so let's just, I guess, raise the taxes, I guess. I don't know. I don't want to oversimplify it, but yeah, you definitely have added a nuance to this that I did not have.
Well, it comes back again, Malcolm, to broken money. When politicians don't have to develop the skill and rigor to actually manage budgets, and they can just borrow, right? Like, if you can just borrow, the problem with, democracies are, a bunch of politicians make promises to the voting populace, and the voting populace are basically the politicians standing next to the money printer going, if you vote me, I'll give you this, I'll give you this, I'll give you this, I'll give you this. And it's effectively the populace that is actually pushing the button on the money printer. And this time around, we voted for Labor and their policies, and now we're seeing this massive increase in taxes and different things. But they voted for it. That's Australians voted for it. So that's what they wanted.
Yeah. I just want to say something quickly. I think the wave of millennials, as to go back to the fact that I'm a millennial, right? A lot of these millennials, their net worths are very low. So you think it's going to get better? I think it would just get worse, because the millennials, they don't have any money. They're just going to vote for the government that is going to take the most from the rich, right? Or the wealthy. Yes. And I'll just say this one quickly. When you go to Malaysia and they rob you, right? They take your change. At least they show you, they see it, and then they show you the knife, and then they take it, right? In Australia, they don't rob you like that. They see it, and then they go to the government and then say, take that, right? Yeah. So it's the same kind of robbery. This is very political, what we're talking about right now, but I guess you have to talk about it. Anyway, well, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just think, that it's an interesting point to think about, like, I'm not to criticize millennials. I was a millennial. I was not a millennial. I was a young person once, right? And yeah, you're right. You look at the older people and you go, these guys just got rich by owning real estate. They're not talented. They were just lucky. They got in early, blah, blah. No wonder they're rich, right? It's not fair. It's easy, right, to think that way. I get it. But then if the politician goes, well, what we're going to do is we're going to give you a break on home buyers grants. We're going to tell banks to ignore HECS debt, which is what they've done when you're assessing people for a loan. And we're going to, give you these grants or drop interest rates. Of course, they're going to vote for that. But what they don't realize, because they're young and they don't have money yet and they're not sophisticated enough, is that all results in real estate prices going up, which makes them more inaccessible. But it got the vote because they didn't know better, right? And they only know better as they age and they get money and different things happen. So it's a really interesting pickle in Australia. And I'm just, I don't know either. And I was a beneficiary of, the real estate prices going nuts through COVID, but I'm also gutted for all those young Australians that were saving to get a property. The middle class just got destroyed. As Michael Saylor, if you saw his interview with Jordan Peterson, where he talked about just watching Main Street get gutted by this money printing, that everybody who had assets just got rich. And if you didn't, you just got poor. And that's what happened. It just boom.
That's why he went to Bitcoin. Because in 2020, he says this multiple times. The S&P had the best year of its life, and everyone else got wrecked. So he said, why am I working? And this is kind of the thing that I think. It's like, why am I working when the system seems wrong? So he kind of just bought the Bitcoin to kind of get on the side of the people that print the money. He went from the guy that's hardworking, trying to compete with Microsoft. He just said, you know what? Let me just get on the side, because this game ain't fair. All right, I'm just going to jump on the side of the people that got the money. They're printing the money, and that's a way Bitcoiners can do it. Can we talk about Jeff Booth quickly? Because
let's talk about Jeff.
So Jeff Booth, I like to be really critical about these things, because I'm so aware that you can get into this Bitcoin thing and just think, oh, this is amazing. It's great. Everything Jeff Booth says is right. And when I listen to Michael Saylor, I really think, damn, this guy, he's so smart. He's got it right. But I really have to think about this. And so Jeff Booth says the natural state of the free market is deflationary, right? Do you agree with that?
Yes, I do.
So right. So he says that people will always buy products that give them more value. So you're always going to go with a company that has the lower value. So yeah, prices will go down in a free market. Yeah.
The other key part of that as well is that technology is decreasing. It should be deflationary, because if you think about everything in our life, when you go down the street and buy your vegetables, the technology in farming should have made vegetables way cheaper. We're getting higher yields, better chemistry mix-up, better fertilizers, more efficient harvesting protocols. But why has everything gone up? And it's not just...
I cannot nod harder. You see how hard I'm nodding? Yes, I agree.
It's not just vegetables. It's literally everything. Technology should have made everything cheaper. You need half the amount of people. But why didn't it? If our inflation rate's 5%, that's 5% after all the deflationary benefits of technology, which are not insignificant. So carry on. So yes.
And if you measure just, So the natural state of the free market is deflationary. We agree with that, but it's not taking into account one factor. All right. So I do agree that's true, but there is actually a factor that this is a criticism of Jeff Booth, right? And I wonder what you think of this. If we were in a deflationary market and our money was going up in value, people would spend less. Part of the spending that happens is because we know that our money is inflating, right? That's the Keynesian, I believe, Keynesian school of economics, right? You have inflation so people spend more and it boosts the economy. So if it went into sanity mode, right? Sanity, where money doesn't get inflated, wouldn't people spend less? That's a social thing that Jeff Booth never really brings up.
It's an interesting question. So what you're basically saying for the listeners, we've both read the Bitcoin Standard, which I tell when people ask me, should I buy Bitcoin? I say, no, you should buy the Bitcoin Standard and read that, and then decide if you want to buy Bitcoin. Yeah. But in that book, it talks about basically Keynesian was an economist, not a good human being, by the way, quite a bad human being, convinced governments that he was the son of a rich family. He was into little boys and all sorts of weird shit. But he basically used to gallivant around convincing governments that this was the best way, the Keynesian model of economics, because if you create inflation, it incentivizes people to spend their money in the economy rather than to save their money, because we want people to spend their money to stimulate the economy. And the governments love that because it also enabled them to print money and inflate the supply at the same time. And the reason it was fixed at 2%, by the way, is because gold, they were producing 2% per year more gold is being mined, which if you extrapolate that out means that in 50 years, there'll be twice as much gold in the world above the ground than there is today. So gold is not deflationary in nature. It's deflationary relative to fiat, but it's not deflationary in nature, whereas Bitcoin is absolutely fine now. So anyways, so the where that was all leading, what was the question?
If we were in a free market that is deflationary, and when our money in the bank, people will spend less. I think they will, right? What do you think?
Because the incentives change now. Because now, if your money's not devaluing in nature and it's holding stable, what you're saying is people might then go, "Oh, I want to save more." Interesting.
Because think about it, because in America, they got the whole credit card thing where you're spending money that you don't even have, and that's the whole thing, right? It changes the culture. You see, being in a free market does change the culture. That's an aspect. Now, I do think I would like to be in that world. I think it would be great if
it'd be amazing. Went down. It'll never happen.
I agree. But no, I don't know. Historically, it's never happened, but historically, we've never had Bitcoin. Well, that's why it's so interesting.
Bitcoin, if you like Jack Mallers, who's one of my superheroes, I love Jack Mallers. Those of you who don't know who it is, look up Jack Mallers. If you're a millennial watching this and you're new to Bitcoin, Jack Mallers is the man, Mallers. He spoke at Bitcoin Prague twice. I was there. The first talk he gave, he got a standing ovation. It was so good. They got him back to give the same talk again on the last day because there was a bunch of school kids there. So he came back and did it again. But he talks about living your life on the Bitcoin standard. More and more young people are doing that, meaning that they're getting paid in Bitcoin, or they're converting all of their money to Bitcoin on the day they get paid. And then they spend throughout the month on their credit card, fiat, and then they pay their credit card off in full at the end of the month, and then they leave everything in Bitcoin. And that's basically how Jack lives his life. He has no fiat dollars. And I think that's a really interesting world. And a lot of the world, by the way, it only sounds weird to Australians, but in Argentina, for example, and countries with hyperinflation, I was in Turkey recently on the northern side of Cyprus. Cyprus is Cyprus, but the northern side is occupied by the Turkish whole political problem. But they have high inflation there. And a lot of people convert their Turkish lira instantly into USDT or Bitcoin or something other. That's just normal, that they get their cash and immediately convert it into something else. And many people now are starting to convert into Bitcoin because, yes, short-term volatility, but it's volatile to the upside generally. So there is a savings technology there, and the volatility is coming out. I think it's a very interesting time. But I want to live in that world where people, they're like, because our life force, guys, is finite. That is even harder than Bitcoin, and we don't even know how much we've actually got. But one thing for sure, once today's gone, it's gone. And I think it's a basic human right that if you expend a day of your life and get a token for investing that in someone else, that token should not be devalued. That's your life we're talking about here. This lie that it's okay to steal somebody's life, right, on top of what they're already paying in taxes. But people have become, Malcolm, so used to, I had somebody say to me, I get it all the time because I've moved to Cyprus, right? Somebody said, oh, Cyprus. Yeah, didn't the government take 40% of everybody's money in the bank once 10 years ago? And I'm like, don't you live in a country where you give up 40% of all your money every year voluntarily? And they're like, oh, didn't think about that. I live in a country that doesn't do that. So it's a very interesting, construct.
Paradigm shift. Right. It's a paradigm. Yeah. And yeah, I just find that interesting. Just one quick thing about Jack Moeller. So I did watch his interview recently. So he does get paid in Bitcoin, right? He spends US dollars on a credit card, and then he actually doesn't sell his Bitcoin. He loans it out, right? To get USD to pay off the loan, right? And that's something I had in these notes, right? Which is the Bitcoin retirement strategy, which is quite.
I want to talk about this because I spoke to another guy when I was in Bitcoin Prague who helps people just get out of the matrix. And basically that's what he does. Exactly that. He lives off debt against his Bitcoin, which is, of course, fiat's going down and down and down. His Bitcoin's going up and up and up. He says, I never pay tax because I live like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, who just live on debt. So talk us through it. Like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. Okay. So I hope everybody understands this. Ask AI if you don't, right? But if you have $1 million in Bitcoin, you loan 50,000 a year off it, right? And you live off the 50,000 and you pay maybe 10% interest on that. And then next year, Bitcoin will go up. So you can loan 50,000 again, but it'll be a smaller percentage of the Bitcoin. Then you pay it off and then keep rolling. Long story short, it only works as long as Bitcoin goes up. Right. As long as Bitcoin is the first human deflationary asset that we have ever had, truly deflationary asset that we've ever had. It only works if that's the case, right? And it doesn't, this whole retire on Bitcoin strategy, there's a guy on YouTube called Alpha Investments, and he invests in magic cards, but he has a saying. He says, the trend is your friend until the end, right? And I think it is, I've asked AI this, because when I first heard about the retire on Bitcoin idea, right, that you can just keep borrowing against your Bitcoin, it'll go up, people say 50% a year. Michael Saylor at BTC Prague, what did he say, 24% a year or 27%? He said
it will decelerate to 21% per year, but it'll be a step down as time goes by, but it'll go down to 21%.
Yeah, so if we talk about this retire on Bitcoin thing, it's a great idea, but as soon as I found out about it, I went straight to Grok and I said, how does this not work? Because it just sounds so good. Like, wow, this thing's going to go up forever. And of course it's said about these risks that I've said before. It works until it doesn't work, until it starts to go down. The network effect, right now, the hash rate keeps going up on Bitcoin. And that's how it's such a great, It's such a
Explain to
great.
people what hash rate is. What is that?
All right, I'm no expert, but I believe hash rate is the amount of energy power that is holding up the Bitcoin system, right? And it's verifying that the people who own the Bitcoins own their Bitcoins, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is how Bitcoin can actually become physical, something Peter Schiff doesn't seem to understand, right? That when you own it, you're actually owning a percentage of this massive energy network, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's genius. Love it. Satoshi found out a way to like co-opt people's greed, right, into keeping the system going. Anyway, yeah, so the hash rate keeps going up, and there's a Bitcoin power law. I don't really understand it, but the kind of idea, right, is that as the hash rate goes up, the price has to go up because there's more energy and power and money going into it. So yes, the Bitcoin, the Bitcoin retire with Bitcoin without selling it, loaning out on your Bitcoin works until it doesn't, right? And Saylor, one of the smartest people, I think he's so smart, says that it's not. It's never going to stop.
Forever, Laura.
Yeah, it's never. Yeah, exactly, precisely. He says that, and again, just to go back, let's link it back to the property. He has a big incentive to do that, right? So he has a big incentive to say that. So again, I don't want to be one of those people that just blindly follow what these people are saying, right? I want to be critical and think about this. All right. What does Saylor want? If you saw in his, not to psychoanalyze him, but in his Jordan Peterson interview, he talked about what his mother said to him. He said, "You're going to change the world one day, son. You're going to change the world." This is the way he feels. He read those sci-fi books where the youth would, save the world. I think part of his motivation, not to get Freudian, right, is ego. I'm sorry. And Carl Jung, we all have a shadow. Again, I just want to be really critical. I'm a very critical, I'm not critical. Maybe cynical is a better thing, right? I don't want to just believe Michael Saylor, because when he speaks, I do nod my head like I've been nodding many times when you say. I go, yes, what you're saying is so true. This is digital Manhattan, digital real estate. I get it, right? Yes. This is amazing technology. But then I have to think, okay, he does have an incentive here, right? So if he sold his Bitcoin, do you think he would tell people? Hell no.
Yeah. Look,
he would be saying, but you don't sell your Bitcoin, right? Yes. And he'd be selling, because one of the things I wrote here, if Saylor sold all his Bitcoin, would he crash the market? And he definitely wouldn't tell people. And you have to be critical about these things. He is a human being. He's not God. He's not Satoshi. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. My feeling on this Michael Saylor thing is that I think Michael is an incredibly gifted, brilliant scientist / engineer, probably more engineer than scientist, a brilliant engineer. And he came into it with an engineer's mind, and then the financial side kicked in. And then I met Michael and got my photo with him and had a brief moment to thank him, because I've made so much money as a result of Michael Saylor. But I honestly think the purity of this idea, there's a reason, there's very few idea viruses that will happen in your lifetime or mine. The internet was one. Bitcoin is another. It's in that category. There's maybe 2 or 3 a century that are. AI is another one. That are just huge megatrends, right? These really pure, and Bitcoin is a pure, simple. Engineers who see numbers and math and understand this stuff, it's like poetry and art and spirituality all blended into one. And I think it has actually genuinely gotten one of the hardest science engineering brains. I think it's got his heart. I really genuinely believe that. And he says, when I die, I'm letting my Bitcoin go. I'm throwing the keys away, because I'm giving it back to the Bitcoin community, because it makes the supply even less, right? And so for all the Bitcoiners, and the cynical person might go, well, that's a great narrative to sell. But I actually believe that he has found his religion, which is not easy for such a hard scientist. at the back of the room, I spoke to a guy who was the chairman of a company called Tobam, which is Tobam. They're a Paris-based firm, and they have a team of mathematicians who basically did a white paper on trying to discover the math of MicroStrategy. Like, is there a formula? Is there a science? Is there a mathematical process that underlies that incredible story of how they went from $1 billion company to $100 billion company in 4 years? And as it turns out, there is an elegant mathematical equation that basically gave them a mandate that they could measure other treasury companies against. And they then raised capital and started measuring, there's 150 Bitcoin treasury companies now in the world, a little over 150. And their team have analyzed the strategies of all of them and handpicked the ones that are either super closely aligned to Michael's formula or have improved it some way. Like MetaPlanet has advantages because they're doing it out of Japan that don't exist because strategies in the US. They're up thousands of % in the first 6 months as a result of deconstructing Thaler's formula. So it's a very, very interesting time. And I think we do need to just not let the cynicism blind us to the fact that this is a truly unique piece of technology that has got such a broad use case.
I agree that what the statement you just said, this is a new technology and it is simply better. I'm open to the idea. Flushing toilets are a better technology than squatting in the ground, and we're not going to go back. Right? I get that. We do these things as humans where we create a better technology, like a smartphone. Who's going to go back from ChatGPT back to Google search? No one's going to do that, right? Mm-hmm. And I think now that Bitcoin is here, it's like Pandora's box, right? Satoshi Prometheus is the analogy that Saylor uses, right? I think that's true. But in the same token of what you said, we shouldn't ignore it, but we also shouldn't just blindly follow it. We have to be skeptical. And I personally use AI whenever Saylor says something, honestly, and I just agree with it so hard. I go to AI, deep think on Grok, and I say, how could this be wrong? When he says Bitcoin is digital Manhattan, to do that, to go to deep think, how is that wrong? Right? How is there a difference between Manhattan real estate, right, which is geographically in a globalized world? That's why it's gone up, right? In a globalized world, it was the seaport in America, right? Financial hub. Yeah, an island, exactly. Bedrock at the bottom. There's a lot of these factors here, right? That he's putting an analogy to. Okay. And as I said before, when I compared it to gold, it's not 1-to-1, right? There are different use cases for a block of gold than there is a Bitcoin. If a man was running at me, I know this sounds ridiculous, like, because I'm saying gold is a self-defense weapon. No, it isn't, but it's a metal that doesn't rust. I hope you guys understand what I'm saying. It's a metal that doesn't, it has properties that Bitcoin does not have. Okay. And Bitcoin has properties that gold doesn't have. That's why I say gold and Bitcoin. If you care about storing wealth over the long term, right? Which is, I think everybody here wants to do, right? If they're watching your podcast, I think I would make an argument for Bitcoin and gold. They're both technologies that do a thing against a certain level of chaos, a different type of chaos.
I think about it right now and I go, the difference is that if somebody came at you for your gold chain right now, they can actually run off with it. Yep. Whereas they can't run off with a seed phrase in your head.
I know. So how good is that?
There's an incentive to come and get your gold bar off you. And like, for example, I wouldn't wear what you're wearing in Paris right now or London. You know, you have to be super careful.
Wear it in Melbourne.
There's parts of Melbourne that, anyways, it's interesting. And I think, I agree. I think doing that testing and that idea testing that is really critical, especially with Saylor, because he's such a brilliant speaker. He's so articulate. Adam Livingston's another one that please watch that. Peter Schiff.
Yeah, let me type it around that.
You'll love it. But I was just going to say something there. I was going to say, well, the reason, one of the memes that has gone viral with Michael Saylor is on CNBC, I think it was, and the interviewer Laura said, where's this going to stop going up? And he said, it's going up forever, Laura. And that became a meme, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for me, the reason that I believe that succinctly, and I know that those of you who watch the Sat Signal often, you've heard me say this, but for those of you who haven't, I think of it in a very, very simple way. A lot of money that comes into people's pockets, they need it to live. And then you've got all the surplus money goes to investment. It's really simple, right? And then you've got funds that invest money. So if you just look at what's not just being consumed, and you look at what's being invested, you're looking at a global asset pool of just under 1,000 trillion, about $800 or $900 trillion of assets. And so you go, okay, let's look at this $900 trillion of global wealth. How is it divvied up? Like, where is it? It's in the stock market and what we call equities. It's in the bond market where people buying government bonds, and it's in, real estate and so on. Okay, well, if you look at the 900 trillion, how much of it is Bitcoin? And the answer is 2 trillion. Or put another way, if you put all of it on a $1 bill or $100 bill, Bitcoin's about 20 cents, out of the $100 of global assets. And then you go, okay, well, how are they all performing against each other? Let's rank them. Well, Bitcoin wins by a mile. Like, bond investors are going negative, and there's hundreds of trillions of dollars locked in bonds where they're looking for ways to move it to more higher performance that also fits within their charter, their mandate. They can't buy Bitcoin directly, perhaps, but they could buy a bond that Michael Saylor issues off his company Strategy, his Bitcoin Treasury company. He's basically finding ways to put straws into these pools of capital and extract value from that pool into his. So Bitcoin is the smallest asset pool, but it is outboxing every other asset class by a massive margin. And so when I look at that and I go, is this going to slow down? No. And now that we've got MicroStrategy, here's something interesting. The top performing stock in Europe is a Bitcoin treasury company called Blockchain Group. The top performing stock in Japan is a Bitcoin treasury company, Metaplanet, headed by Dylan and Claire, a guy about your age. And the top performing stock in America is Strategy, a Bitcoin treasury company. Michael Saylor was the first one. Now there's over 150 Bitcoin treasury companies that are essentially leveraging the tools available to them as a public company and creating off-ramps for real estate investors. Like Michael Saylor's yield product is basically saying to real estate owners, hey, you want equity and a yield, a return? Come and buy this off me. I've got it. And he's competing with real estate. Then he's got his bonds product, which is competing with bonds. And so, that's why when people go, why are you so sure this is going to go up? Yes, I think there's people who want free speech. Yes, I think there's people who want to store their wealth. But the real money is wanting better returns. And like, people, well, how does Strategy make money? When you own $60 billion worth of Bitcoin that's going up at 40% a year, like Saylor, you're making 40% a year on $60 billion. How many companies in the world are making $25 billion a year profit and growing because they keep, and you look at Saylor's trajectory, like Metaplanet had 100 Bitcoin only a short time ago, and now they've got thousands, So where is this going? And then you've got nation states and everything, and you've got a finite supply. So I look at it and I go, I think Michael's right. At the end of the day, there is definitely always, you've got to check and verify, absolutely. But then you've also got to place your bets. Michael Saylor said there are two types of people. There are people who talk about Bitcoin, but the people who really understand it just buy it. Interesting.
There's a saying in the Bible where Jesus said, "You believe because you've seen. Blessed are those who believe without seeing." So again, there's religious undertones with Bitcoin and all that. But I do just want to say quickly, like, the Bitcoin treasury thing of everyone doing that, it just seems like the companies are they're doing what Saylor's doing. They were competing. They had a yoga studio, for example, and then COVID happened, and so they shut down the yoga studio. And so they say, I don't want to compete in the yoga thing anymore. I'm just going to buy Bitcoin and then get on the side of the people printing money, right? So I do think it's totally true what you're saying. Like, the trend for Bitcoin absolutely is bullish because, as you said, it's a 20 cents in 100. But then what is the number then? And that's the question that nobody knows the answer to, right? What is the number? What is it? Is it $1 of that $100 bill? We all know if you that bonds are dead. I think every financial person right now knows bonds are dead. So let's compare Bitcoin to Apple then, right? And Saylor does this, right? And he shows, right, that Bitcoin is far greater returns. So then what I would say about that is Saylor says there's when you first learn about Bitcoin, you're the skeptic, then you're the trader, then you're the maxi, right? Are you familiar with this? Yeah,
Totally.
I would argue you're talking like a trader. Right? You're not really, because when you're saying, oh, the Bitcoin's going to be bullish because everyone's buying these treasury companies, right? And let me know if I'm wrong, guys. Let me know if I'm wrong. Okay, if everyone's bullish because everyone's buying the treasury companies, then we're not really talking about the thing that I'm talking about with Bitcoin, which is it allows me to truly own something, like to truly own my economic worth, right? So yes, they come hand in hand, but the trend that you said Bitcoin will go up because these treasury companies are going up and people will buy these treasury companies more and more and more. I'm just saying that where's the actual tangible value here, right? You see what I'm saying? Like,
yeah. I mean, the treasury companies basically. I mean, the thing about Bitcoin is there's so many vectors to the story, right?
Yes,
there's so many vectors. We've covered free speech, we've covered moral rights, we've covered everything, right? But treasury companies are basically playing the fiat game.
Yes.
Saylor has figured out I can print my own capital, which is my shares. So I can offer shares. People give me fiat currency, which is effectively he's got a money printer, which is called his share capital structure. And so he's using the fiat Ponzi mechanism game to convert as many fiat dollars as possible into the finite asset of Bitcoin. And I think you and I both, there's this little sort of tingly sense in our gut going, yeah, you're basically doing what fiat does, and that doesn't end well. So somewhere inside it doesn't reconcile, and it certainly doesn't reconcile with the real heart of what Bitcoin is about, which is about truly owning a piece of something immutable, permanent, and deflationless.
And that makes sense. Okay, you're building layers on top of it because as we talk about the Bitcoin standard, when everyone's on the Bitcoin standard, like HTTPS, right? I don't even know if I said that right, but when everyone's on that standard, then it makes total sense, right? That all that is here. But yeah, I just want to say one quick thing about Saylor, because I think Saylor's super, super smart. I truly believe a lot of the things he's saying. I think he's so smart. But again, I get skeptical when I start believing someone too much. I'm just like, where are they wrong? No one's perfect. So I just want to say something quickly that Saylor said in a interview that I think it says a bit about his mentality. So he said people think that cavemen ran around chasing antelopes with a spear, right? Running behind the antelope and chasing it with a spear. And he said, I don't think people did that. I think people are smart, right? So they set fire to the forest and drove the antelopes off a cliff and then just waited at the bottom, right? So he as an engineer, he thinks about these problems like this. So it's kind of interesting how he approaches the task of getting wealth, right? He's not going to a job and then, providing, I guess he is providing value, but you see what I'm saying? He's so clever that he knows he's looking for these ways and he's found it, and it's awesome and it's great. Yeah. I'm just saying, yeah, I'm very interested in it. Very, very interested.
My negative, if I was to offer a negative about Michael's speech at Prague, it's being lauded online as probably his best speech. But I think it's maybe his best speech, if you're talking about the number go up, because it was just telling you how you're going to get insanely rich if you own Bitcoin. So maybe he was just trying to appeal to people's greed that day.
And hear the audience. What were the audience doing? You were there, right? When he said 21 million, what did people do?
Everyone loved it, right? That's human. That's human. Like, he just told us exactly what we wanted to hear. And everybody gave him a standing ovation. And it was amazing. And look, he's probably right, but there wasn't much discussion around this stuff, which, like my friend Tony Yazbek, he owns the Bitcoin Way, and he's old school, hardcore, sovereign wealth, independent from the government. That's what lights him up. He doesn't think in fiat terms. He doesn't think about getting rich from Bitcoin. He thinks about getting your integrity back as a sovereign individual, about having choice to live wherever you want, to be able to move and be free. And I have a big part of me that loves that. When I first started, it was like, I'm going to get rich from Bitcoin. Now it's kind of like probably half that and half as I've really understood and seen the pain and the heartache and I've learned a lot about World War II during the time that I learned about Bitcoin, and I come to see the enormous damage that is done when political leaders can just print into wars. Whereas, in the past, as you rightly pointed out, kings had to actually go and get money from their gold from their people, and people had to die, and it was just like a whole different thing. So, fiat money is a real problem. So it's really interesting.
And Bitcoin solves it. Yeah.
It
Bitcoin
does.
solves it. Yeah.
Bitcoin does. If everyone ran on the Bitcoin standard and the governments can't print it, it changes things. And
There is something I do want to say, because it's one point that when I was on live streaming the other day, there was a guy talking about how he's got XRP, and I just went off on him. Okay, I'm just going to say this.
I got hammered on this, and you got to be careful, bro, because you talk about the XRP. No,
I don't care. I don't care.
We're going to get killed right now.
All right, XRP is worthless. XRP is worthless. All right, completely worthless. Okay, it's use case, and if I'm wrong, please hammer me in the comments, because I want to know where I'm wrong. All right, where am I wrong? And I'll tell you why. XRP is a token that facilitates banks trading with each other. Why does it have to have value? It doesn't actually have to have value. If they can make more of them, can they make more XRP? I believe they can. If they can't, then I'm silly. All right. But somebody correct me if I'm wrong. XRP, I think Bitcoin is not crypto. I think Bitcoin is completely different to crypto, because Satoshi gave it away and he went away. He can't come back and say, oh, I would fix this in Bitcoin, right? That's what makes Bitcoin different to every other crypto. Okay. Now, where am I wrong? Please in the comments let me know, because I think XRP is worthless. It's going to zero. It has no reason to have any value, right? And people are just using USDT anyway to subvert like banks sending USD over. So I don't understand here. What's the value of this thing?
I have asked this question of XRP owners. Look, I don't wish anybody ill will, and
of course,
I look at every crypto other than Bitcoin as a tech startup, centralized human beings that are in control of it, that can be influenced, that can buy influence, and all this stuff. But I agree. I ask an XRP owner, okay, so explain to me how the number goes up. Like, why does the token value, if I buy in, I actually asked them at the XRP stand in Blockchain Week Paris. I went to the Ripple. I said, why should I put $100,000 into this? And explain to me, like I understand Bitcoin, like I understand, okay, there's 2 trillion of assets there. It's a way to store wealth. It's got a trading history. I think it's a better asset in so many ways. And I believe money's going to keep going there, and I'm going to bet on that. So tell me why I should bet on you. And you can tell me about how big the banking system and all this, but I just don't understand. Now, I could be wrong like you, and I just haven't gone down that rabbit hole enough. But Adam Livingston says the same thing.
Why does it have to have value? This is what I want to know. And yeah, somebody please, I want the smartest person. Please comment. Tell me why. Please tell me why, because I want to know. I really want to know. But yeah, I think we agree.
Is it there that like in the banking system, it's powered by Swift? I mean, I'm talking from ignorance here. Like, I'm going to be totally honest. I have not done the work.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
So if what I guess I would think is, okay, if it's like Swift, is the rails that transfers money across borders. Swift is like a co-ownership by all the big banks around the world are the co-owners of this organization called Swift, and they move a shitload of money. So does Swift generate fees for these transactions? And if they do, as an XRP token holder, is that how it makes money? Like, do the banks pay XRP Foundation a small percentage, which then gets distributed back to the token holders? I don't know.
Why would anyone use that over USDT?
I don't know. This is
so you're going to use the one that, I don't know. But are there any fees with USDT? I don't know. I never really used it.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a whole different pod. I just think it is
because XRP is essentially a fiat currency, right? So you may as well use the US fiat currency.
In many ways, it's probably a bit different in a lot of ways, but I think I would just say to XRP or any other, I used to own XRP, I've owned Solana, I've owned Cardano,
Me
all
too.
these things. One of the, but I sold them when I realized I didn't understand any of them. I was just buying them because I was speculating that they would go up, and I didn't understand
Same.
why. And when I admitted that, I sold them. One of the slides in Saylor's deck in Prague was he said, not only has Bitcoin won, the industry agrees. And he put up tweets from Charles Hoskinson, who's the founder of Cardano, saying Cardano is going to sell Cardano to buy Bitcoin. He literally put it in a tweet, and he was speaking at Paris Blockchain Week. So many of the leaders, the leader of Coinbase, Brian Armstrong, all these, infrastructure providers and heads of tokens, even Brad Garlinghouse tweeted saying how Bitcoin is the truest math and truest form. And he put up the quotes, and you can watch the Bitcoin Prague talk yourself and see what Saylor said. So, look, mate, we've been going for an hour and a half. Can't believe it. I love talking to you, and I really appreciate you making the time. Guys, let us know in the comments. Like, this has been a really fun discussion. And Malcolm, you give me a lot of hope. I hope there's more bright young people out there in Australia, around the world, that are going to sort of ask these deeper questions. And those questions, I think my observation of you is that you've had some success financially because you've become really great at social media. And so because of that, you've accumulated probably a lot more money than the average person your age, and therefore you've thought about these deeper questions. And so I always try not to judge those who are still earlier in the process of just trying to understand. Like, if you want to come to Bitcoin and get your money turned from 10 grand to 20 grand, have at it. Come and join the revolution. And then when that 20 grand becomes 100 grand and you start to accumulate money and you'll start to ask these deeper questions that Malcolm has already asked and answered, and is answering for himself, because he's economically advanced for where.
I just want to say, I'm not this is my art. Just quickly, I am not so much richer than everyone else. I'm just more frugal. Let's be real. I just ate beans and rice for 10 years. So, yes, it's great. Yes, it's great. I have a business and I work multiple jobs. Most people work one. I get it, right? But I was just dedicated. It's like the Shawshank Redemption, right? I didn't break out by just breaking the bars. I had to go years and years and years with the rock hammer to get out. So anyway, that's what separates me from that. But look, we've been going for so long. I'm happy to talk about this anytime. If you want to go back, or if you want to do a debate, Bitcoin versus gold, I would love to do that. I would really love to do that, because I want somebody to. I'm fighting with him myself.
Watch Adam Livingston. Honestly, I got
even
when this is finished, go watch that one video and then email or DM me what your thoughts are after watching that, because I can see his brain and your brain. You've got a very sharp brain, and
I appreciate it.
Like, you're super bright, and I love talking to smart people. So I go and watch that, and I think I'd be interested in your thoughts afterwards. But guys, I want to just say thank you, Malcolm, for coming on. Drop us a comment. Malcolm's going to read and respond to them all. Can I just say one thing, guys? Like, be polite. Like, this
I don't care.
Oh, dude, like,
I'm a TikToker. I don't care. Every night people say the words. I don't care. Boy, be a great. Hey, I just want you to be smart. If I'm wrong, don't just say he's wrong. He's wrong because da 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 da. That's what I want.
Don't just call him a clown or whatever. And XRP guys, look, have at it. Go for it. Like, I want you to win. I want XRP. Gel. I don't like anybody losing money, and I don't want to shit on it because I don't know enough about it. But yeah, and I'm not shitting on gold either. I'm genuinely curious. But there you go. But that's it, guys. Like, subscribe, comment. Hope you guys are doing well out there. Thank you for joining us for this discussion. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Thank you. It was good.
Hey there. I hope you enjoyed that episode of Unemployable. If you'd like to watch another episode, just click there.